Press Sunday morning, the home of some of the best fun you'll ever have. Now, speaking of fun, somebody who is an old, I won't say she's old. I will say she's been my friend for a long time. Um, since I'm old, I guess Sarah, you're screwed.
I'm old. Let's face it. I am not 23. How's that?
Nor have I. Haven't been for a while, but that's been about how long we've known each other since we. You used to be a great guest to have at the RadCon Science Fiction Convention here in the Tri Cities. We really liked having you. Now, but you're not here over history. You have written a book.
That's what they
Tell us
tell me.
about it. Tell. Okay, she wrote a book called The Bone Orchard, and if you want to read something really good, go read any one of the 112 reviews she's gotten on Amazon alone. That's not counting Goodreads and everything else that say. I mean, I could do the entire interview just reading you the reviews and watching you blush.
I
Uh,
haven't I confess I haven't read them. I received a lot of advice that said just don't give into the temptation. Don't go look.
well, ma'am, were you to read the interviews that are written about your work on Facebook, you would be, or not on Facebook, on Amazon, you would be just absolutely blushing. Your readers love you. They love your work. They love the settings. They love the characters. Some of the ones that struck me the most is the book is so well written, you forget that you're reading a gothic horror fantasy. You just sucked into the characters. All concept of uh, putting away the disbelief is gone. You just sucked them in with your writing. Your world building is credited at over and over and over again. And having heard snippets of what you've been up to, well, I'm friends with Irene,
Yep.
and I kind of think if the rumor mill is true, you and Irene talked a little bit as during the development of this work.
Oh yes, there were she listened very patiently to a massive litany of me basically tearing my hair and saying, I don't know what to do. I'm writing a book that I don't know if I'm good enough to write this book. It's very lovely when somebody, when you have that complaint, says, well, I'll get better.
Well, yeah, Irene would say that, or Phil. The because I mean she's put out some epic series herself,
Yeah,
really brilliant stuff. But this is your first.
it is the first one published. Yes, I will say it wasn't the first novel I ever wrote. It's just the first one that was good enough.
So how many desk drawers would I have to open to find the desk drawer novel?
Not very many. But there were three that I wrote before I wrote Bone Orchard. The first one the first two actually will never see the light of day while I live. One of them is so old it's printed on computer pin paper from a reel. The kind with the
Oh, yeah,
side.
the little holes on the side. Do you peel it
Yeah.
off?
Unfortunately, the ink wasn't very good, and it is slowly fading away into the dust of the past as it was intended to do. But the good news is writing those gave me the chops to then imagine I could get good enough to do the Bone Orchard. I knew when I started it that I didn't have the skill I needed to write it, which is why, in part, why it took me so long. Was just I had to build those muscles, and I'm not really a short story writer for the most part. Um, while it's a form that I love to read, it's not a form that I have as good a chops in as I do on the long form.
And that's
So
what we're talking about. This is a long form.
yeah, this one is 400 pages. My editor was incredibly generous in when when she observed that there was a missing character, and there was. I said, I'm gonna need more words. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna need more words. And she said, you let me worry about how many words you carry on and put the thing in and do it right. And I was like, okay, excellent, perfect. Off we go then. So that was what I did. And it was very seamless. the character that's inserted is very seamless. There was a space for that character. It should have been there all along. It was one of those things where even after I'd worked on it as long as I had, when when a professional gets hold of your work and says, "No, no, this this here's a gap. We need something more here." I don't know, Andrew. That's a really good question. Um, I think it in part because I was writing a mystery, and mysteries need a certain cast of characters to think might have done it. Um, and what she was identifying was that there needed to be more serious possibilities in the beginning than existed already. So
Well, that
basically, in a way, a red herring. I needed another red herring.
but that's what a good editor will do. She'll make your first novel, instead of being a rather simple, she will make it look like it's your 12th.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is that um, I it's a very character driven novel, and because of that, it it had spots where the mystery portion of it needed a little strengthening, um, but it also had places where it needed just more balance between the plot and the character density, because the main character is fairly complicated by having dissociated identity disorder, a version thereof. It is highly fantasized. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I just read about it a lot. um, but
Called
she's fair,
research.
yeah, I did a lot of research. I read a lot of first person accounts so that I could try to at least do justice to the fact that I didn't know what I was talking about. At the level that if I was trying to write a real book, book set in the real world, I wouldn't have been able to use the fantasy portions and to I would have been uncomfortable using it using dissociated identity disorder in a real world setting, because I don't know enough about it, and I I have a layman's grasp, but that's not good enough when you're dealing with someone else's actual trauma. It's a matter of a little bit of respect. So the fact that I was working in a fantasy setting let me do a lot of character things that were very complicated, and those just needed a little bit better balance. That's all. Oh well, that's all. It was it was not easy, but yeah, as you say, that's what a good editor does. That's why writers need them.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, I got to believe that. Uh, a question coming in.
Oh, yes, I believe I just was it's just it lagged between where I saw it and where it came up.
Well, no, where it comes up is when I look over and say, "Hey, uh, I think I'm going to put Andrew's. Sorry, Andrew. Uh, put his
Question up.
question up." Um,
Okay, I'm sorry. I will hold off answering them until they pop
oh
up. But
no.
yes, this is the question I was answering about how does an editor identify a missing character? And in this case, it was a balance issue between character work and plot. So,
Hmm. Okay, that was it. No, you're welcome to um, answer them as you see them, because the I will just pop over and put one up if I see one that's interesting, because
awesome.
um, oh, I'm sorry, train's going by,
Oh,
and
hi Kevin, and good morning everybody.
yes, so that's where we are. So now we have Sarah Mueller. If I may be so bold, how long have you been working on this book?
It took me 10 years and 4 surgeries to write it.
Now
And it took
was that the character transplant surgery, or
no, no, it was just the fact that, my body's not always stitched together real firmly. Um, but it needed, yeah, it took me a long time to figure out and develop the tools that I needed to write the book I wanted to write. Um, it was a bigger bite than I could chew at the beginning, but you know, you gradually get better at chewing. And and then it took a while to find anybody who was willing to take the chance, because this is a very risky book to publish. It's a little bit difficult to say simply, it's a mystery. It is a mystery, but it's not only a mystery, and some of the character elements for fans of mystery may feel a little odd, or a little too involved, and some of the mystery elements are going to feel a little odd or a little too involved for some of the people who are reading, science fiction lit kinds of things. So it was a risk. Um,
Okay, they want to know. They want the title.
the title is you could Bob, you can put it up in text if you'd like. Also, it's called The Bone Orchard. Um, and it is a little genre bending. When I wrote it, I decided that I needed to um, employ a lot of genre tropes from science fiction as well as fantasy, as well as historical, as well as mystery. So yeah, it's got some very genre bendy things going on, mostly in that world building. It needed to feel real. It would be very easy to have it be a surface read, and I didn't want that. That wasn't the book that I don't get me wrong, I love popcorn books. I devour them like everybody else in the world, but that wasn't what I wanted this one to be. I wanted it to be more grounded, feel more grounded than that.
The
Um,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's for those of you who might not be familiar with it. It's about a the murder of an emperor. He has a handful of incredibly terrible sons, and there it is. Incredibly terrible sons, and he is convinced one of them has murdered him. He gives his basically enslaved mistress an order that if she will um, find out who murdered him and make sure they come to justice, and make sure that none of his sons ever sit his throne, she can actually be free. She is held to this command by a device called mind lock. Um, so she really can have her liberty, but she really does have to do something incredibly dangerous. Um, Most people don't survive bucking princes. Certainly not when you're trying to, you know, figure out which one of them committed a murder. She is a madam of a brothel, basically, that is staffed by artificial people. She has grown them from bones, hence the title, uh, and has put pieces of herself into them. Um, so she's got a good spy listening post, basically, in that a brothel, intelligence services, literally since the beginning of time, have been very uncomfortable about the degree of information that can be collected in brothels and by sex workers. So that was a pretty natural listening post to pick. And because it's a high end gentleman's club, um, that's where everybody goes. If you're anyone, you go to Orchard House. Well, if you're anyone and you're a man, ladies, of course, wouldn't go to Orchard House.
I couldn't say. Uh, all my years in the Navy, I can only remember the Bible study classes. Uh, but I mean, for example, this book. I was just looking over here as I pulled it up for the sharing. A masterfully woven plot with refreshing narrators. Now that's Publishers Weekly.
Yep.
And the book list starred review. Now you are a starred review.
Hmm.
Uh, Equal parts magic and mystery. Mueller weaves together psychological tension and character driven. Oh, look, just like you, they said character driven. Plots that will keep the readers guessing until the very end, because again, it is a mystery as well as Gothic. The
Yeah.
It is just. I mean, before we went on, I had sat down and read your reviews that you were getting, and in order to just um, one of them here says Napoleonic steampunk with plenty of court intrigue and oh yeah, a murder.
I wouldn't have called it Napoleonic, but I can understand how they went there.
Well, they and the next review title is Wow, great first book, moving and fascinating. I want more. I mean, since you can't read, you won't read your reviews. I will tell you, your reviews are good. A stunning dark sci-fi mystery fantasy debut. Oh, and then somebody likes the cover. Tell me
The
about the
cover is
cover.
the cover is pretty superb, I have to say. I was very lucky in the covers, as it were. I
I
got
didn't. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I just the covers are never in the author's control, and so it was lovely when um, I got here. Would we all think this is the cover here? And I said, okay. And I saw it, and it was just like it was better than Christmas. It was marvelous to go, oh, yes, that is, in fact, the exact right cover for this book. It's so
Oh,
good. I love it so much.
there's no words to say how good this cover is. I mean, as I look at a blown up piece of it, I mean, the flowers, the use of the little mushrooms in there is just it 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 says everything you need to say. The clean white pristine bones
Also, the crossed fingers I thought were a particularly nice touch.
that I have to admit I had not caught on to the crossed fingers. Uh and
It's
but
just it's very lovely. And it represents the book really, really well, which, as I say, is difficult. Cover artists have a rough go of it, but that was just gorgeous. I'm very, very fortunate. Um,
yeah, it's you well, as a writer one can only dream of getting a great cover. I have
yeah.
a lot of writer friends, and I will hear the stories of the cover from hell. Um,
They're certainly out there.
hey, I got some on my shelf over here. The um, it's
And
like
sometimes those have great stories in them. So, but the cover is one of the things that first communicates with your reader.
yeah, it attracts them in. We I haven't got it ready to release, but I've been having more fun with covers lately. But here, what does this one say? I love that I get gothic, Victorian, steampunk, and magical fantasy vibes all mixed together with surprisingly relevant allegory. So tell us about the relevant allegory.
Um, well,
Oops.
no, it's just allegory is difficult to talk about sometimes. It it is a story about how society treats women at its base. I did a lot of sociological research in the Victorian era about women and the laws surrounding women. And I think one of the quotes that I found the most painful was a woman in England before the Married Women's Property Act, and her quote was to a hall where she had come to speak. She said, "I do not come to speak to you of my rights, because I have no rights. I have only wrongs."
Ooh, that
And and that was a woman who had society. She was not a woman of a poor class. She was not a woman who was even outside of the bounds of polite society. But that was her experience of her world. And I wanted to showcase that fact that female presenting people have had a really bad go of it for a very long time. And that's not different now than it is then. We don't we don't respect certain forms of work. Sex work is not very respected. Um, so I put my character in sort of the worst possible position so that I could talk about society. And even whether we like it or not in the modern era, in the 21st century, those are our roots
Well, you know
of
what?
American society are in that society, and they
There
still show. Sorry.
it shows. No, it shows. I'm planning a show uh, that I haven't got the title for it. I got one of my first guests in, but it was 1972, and
Mhm.
she uh, went to get a library card. They would not give her a library card without her husband's permission. It was 1974 before a woman could insist on getting a credit card without her husband's permission.
It's fairly I don't remember the exact year, but it's also in the early 70s before a woman could have a checking account that was separate, a bank account that was separate from her husband's.
Well,
So we're not real far removed from some pretty troubling situations. And the Bone Orchard is certainly a magnification of all of those. That's one of the beautiful things about fantasy settings is that it gives the author so much more scope to discuss those things, um, and put them very much in a spotlight that people can hear. Because in the real world, eventually you have to have good news, right? It you can't subsist only on bad news. But in a fantasy setting, sometimes you can say things that would be a lot harder to say if you were writing in a real world setting.
I
Um,
understand. May we say Star Trek?
exactly. Star Trek discussed loads and loads of things. Um, I mean, well, very early example, um, in Jules Verne's, 100,000 leagues, 10,000 leagues, however many leagues under the sea.
20,000.
Um, his his anti-hero, if you will, Captain Nemo, is basically objecting to British colonialism and the destruction of environment. And that's kind of impressive. It's 19th century.
It is. There's a.
So it's but nobody was going to hear him about that. Not at that time, not in the English speaking world. No one was going to hear that. But he could do that if he wrote it in a fantasy. Because then people could hear it.
So, no, I mean, I'm liking everything I'm hearing you say. I'm just trying to figure out a way to get you to keep saying it. Uh, so, how's been the response to that?
Well, obviously seems like it's going very, very well. Um, I think that that I think that so far people have certainly resonated with it. There was a I did read one review that was up on Locus, and the reviewer said that the book was quietly angry. And you don't write this book because you weren't angry. Um, so yeah, I think people got it, which is always a relief because the written format is devoid of a lot of the props of visual media. Um, yes, Jonathan Swift, another excellent example. Um, and sometimes it's books like Mark Twain discussing racism. And did he do perfectly at it? Well, no. But did he at least try? Yes, he did. Um, so there's a lot of attempts, and some of them are more successful than others. But sometimes you can say a lot in fiction that you can't say, or that you
Have you
can't put out front in a way that people can get their heads around. So,
I understand. And our Phil and I wrote a novel together that we're working on the sequel to, where we address the Arab-Israeli conflict in a way that couldn't. If we had tried, if I'd gone out and wrote this book as a post on Facebook, I would have been crucified.
Well, it's everybody has trouble around certain subjects. And much like if you're a teacher in a classroom, not all of your students are going to have the same best learning mode. And you can yell at them all you want, but yelling very rarely is going to get you the results you actually want out of a classroom. Um, and I'm not saying that writers are all teachers, but we do write for reasons. Even and authors who are writing, as I said, just popcorn books, that they're not meant to be, but they're still writing for a reason. They're writing to amuse. They're writing to give you a moment in your day that is a little better. They're a little release, a little escape. And one of the things about The Bone Orchard was I also didn't want it to be unremittingly grim, because I don't believe in I don't believe defeatism is going to get anybody anywhere. Um, there's the face reality. The situation is very, very terrible, but I do want the I didn't want it to be a sense of absolutely of absolute grimness. I hope the cat is fine. I love cats and I've had them for a long time, though I don't currently have one.
Okay,
Tragically, my son is deathly allergic. Um, so
we had to bring up the cat subject here because uh, I believe that what you just said is not having a cat is that you may get kicked out of the guild of Victorian Gothic writers.
it's true. It's true. I may. The good news is I own a teapot um, that I actually use. But yeah, no, I don't have a cat. It's very sad. As I say, I do love them. I borrow my friend's cat Rumble on a regular basis, though. So um,
Well, as I was telling you earlier, all you got to do is just get a bunch of pictures of Rumble, change his name to Dumbledore, and then post them up there every now and then, and you'll get all sorts of people loving your cats.
well, maybe I will do a round of borrowing my friend's cats someday for a visitation of cats. Um,
Ooh, a stone cat. We There you
that
go.
would be hilarious because Stone was my maiden name. So
You know, I have to go out in the front yard. I have two stone cats out there that my granddaughter comes over and paints all
ah,
my lawn stuff. And she did such a good job painting them, and they're so well sculpted. Every now and then, I will look over and think that's one of my cats. Of course, I don't really have any cats. I hate cats, but the wife has them living around here. Um, so,
I love that quote, Charles. That is a perfect way to put it. That science fiction and fantasy carry ideas in disguise to sneak past your bias. That's beautiful. That's really good. That is exactly it.
and apparently, you've done a wonderful job. I do Audible books, and when I saw that this thing has been released on Audible,
Mhm. Yep, it's available as an audiobook in also on Libro FM and other places that you get audiobooks. Yeah.
excellent. Yeah. So, the who was your narrator for your audiobook? Do you
Oh,
remember?
she is so marvelous. So Elle Potter, um I have got to say such a magnificent job because the book involves multiple personalities in the same head, plus independent thoughts in the same head, lots of different characters. She was so magnificent. Just so magnificent. I it was it was wonderful. I got I got 3 different auditions pieces and I chose hers. The other 2 I will say were also supremely excellent. It was just a case of hearing her voice and thinking, "That's the one. That right there. That's the one." but I could see why all three were on the prospective list.
Oh, that's I understand that one. I took when we did our first audiobook, we had a story in there by oh God, I hate it when my memory fails me, but I picked the best story in there and sent them said I want to hear whomever read this and the damn she writes this beautiful stuff um, and now I can't remember her name. But yeah, when you can hear them read the books and they make it sound just like you had imagined it sounding in your head, you know you've got the right video artist.
Yes, definitely. Um,
So, so you're telling us that I mean you've been successful with this. You've been working on it for 10 years. You had a strong network of friends supporting you as you worked on it. Uh, and you had a wonderful editor. You've got a great um, um, narrator for the book. So Tor's been good to you.
Tor has been superbly good to me. They have been magnificent from start to finish. Um, uh, Anybody who put out a book in the last 2 years deserves an award of some kind. It's so hard. Everything was there were the shipping issues. Everybody's had one by now. The paper shortage that publishing had, the just the challenge of there was a plague. Uh, there's a plague, and people are still, we're trying to muster the emotional resources and the time and energy to do these things. It's been, I have to say, it was a stupendous effort, and I am so grateful. Um, I'm also very grateful. My acknowledgments page, I know I've missed somebody in there because 10 years, it was a long time. But those people really did um, also did, wonderful support for me over the years. But yeah, Tor has been definitely good to me.
So it's hard to argue with this kind of success. Being like say, first novels are rough because in the back of your mind, as you're seeing that first box of books show up, and starting to see the pictures on there and starting to hear the nice words, you're thinking, okay, but what's the next book? Will the next book be good enough to get me picked up for the third book? Um, so if I say that, what can you tell us about your work going forward?
Well, Bone Orchard is a standalone. I won't say that I will never write in that world again. I very well may, but uh, just the next one will not be there. Uh, the next one is another historical basis dark fantasy. I can't talk about it very much yet because it is still in development stages. Um, I had other books written, but it would be a poor decision to put out something vastly different than the place where obviously I have hit a sweet spot for my tone of writing. Um, so I am working on something that is another dark fantasy. There's another crime. There's court political intrigue. Uh, there's a healthy dose of, if you think the 19th century is grim for women, the 16th century is not a lot better. Um, it's, but it's fun. I'm having a grand time with it. And the good news is I've had a lot of practice now and I write books a lot faster than I used to. So, um, yeah, I love audiobooks also. As somebody who spends a lot of time in the car, um, my husband's family are in Reno, and they are fully as dear to me as anybody that was my family also. Um, so we drive back and forth a lot, and between the Portland area and Reno, Nevada, and it's a long drive. So audiobooks are definitely your friend. Um, I did want to go back to something. Dale had said that he's been watching interviews with strippers, and yeah, I it is very heartbreaking. Um, the women in the profession. Actually, when I was in college, I knew a woman who was stripping her way through college because that's how she could afford it. She's a lawyer now, in case you wondered. No, I won't be telling you her name.
That's,
Um,
I knew a woman like that too.
um, yeah, she's magnificent. I really respect the bootstrap levitation that requires. Um, 1600s, yep. It's 16th century, so it'll be socially it's still a little in flux because again it's a fantasy, so I'm not adhering strictly to that late. So technically, historians call that the early modern period between the medieval and the pre-industrial. But it's going to be fun. I'm enjoying it a lot. Um, is that the sort of story that makes people think twice about people in whatever profession?
Well, I
Sorry.
mean, I always had the concept that says if I'm a young guy and I've got a strong back, you know, and that's the way I only way I can get by because I can't get to school or I can use this to pay my way into school. Nobody looks twice at it. Uh,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can do heavy labor and get through school if you, and you know, but sex work and stripping and that all the sex work adjacent professions, and there's loads of them. Um, they're they just take a lot of they take a lot of courage. Honestly, they take a lot of nerve and they take a lot of strength. Um, I actually wrote a piece for Criminal Element about a madam in Mississippi, and she was fascinating. I was going to do it about just sort of a list of famous madams, and then I found her. Um, and she's impressive. You can look her up. There's a documentary about her. Her name is Nellie Jackson, and it's not a. She was madam. She probably started as a prostitute, but nobody's sure, or at least nobody's admitting. And she made it in a profession where she started in the unsalubrious town of Possum Corner, Mississippi. So um, I was very impressed at the sheer amount of courage that it took.
well, I cannot argue or disagree with a single thing you said there, and I'm glad that you are. Um, Sorry, I was looking over my shoulder to see why the cat's there.
The dog is in the
It's my
the
dog.
dog is in the cat tree, in the background.
That's Vern, by the way. He Vern. Oh, he thinks we called his name. The dogs. This is about the time of day they get to go for their walk, and
Yeah.
so if I mention them at all, they're up and at it and ready to go. But since you don't have any cats, you don't get to take your cats for a walk.
I unfortunately, alas, I do not. When I was a child, we had Siamese cats, and my mother actually trained them to walk on leashes just like they were dogs. And they went everywhere with us. Well, we moved around the country a lot, and the cats always went with us. And they would we would get out at rest stops and walk the cats on leashes, just like a couple of small dogs. And they were sort of the large, apple-headed, tough Siamese cats, and they were unimpressed by other people's dogs. They just didn't care. It was very upsetting for the dogs. They wanted to be
That
taken much more seriously.
sometimes like Vicky. Vicky is my little puppy that she more people like her on Facebook than like me, but she is an endless source of fun, and she is the inspiration because we were talking about before use of pets in fiction.
Yes.
Now, do you have any pets in your book?
Bone Orchard has no pets. Um, there are no side pet characters in the Bone Orchard. In the upcoming book, I don't have one yet, but that doesn't mean there won't be one. Um, uh, Andrew Lucas was mentioning Elizabeth Bear's series at the turn of the century, and yes, it's interestingly I hadn't happened to read that work of hers when I was writing Bone Orchard. No, I don't have any familiars, Dale, in what I'm doing now, and no familiars in Bone Orchard. It's a different kind of witch. Um, she's they call her a bone witch, but it's not intended in that way. Yeah, I should add that the lady in question is practicing on the East Coast and is not. I don't know where she is now, so I just know that she had gone and passed her bar exam. That was all I know. After that, we lost touch. Unfortunately, she was lovely. Um, it does happen. Pets get it rough. Particularly small animals. They're fragile. Um,
Oh, yeah, the
but
idea.
no, so far I've never killed the dog in anything I wrote.
Yeah,
I won't say never. Maybe someday, but not today.
I know it made it hard to have Old Yeller too. I know. Uh, the but no, I just it is an interesting tool for building stress. There's a writer named Mark Tufo.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever met him or we've had him on a couple times. He has a bulldog. He starts off with the zombie apocalypse and a bulldog that's too fat to walk. Oh, you know what you're thinking. You know, oh God, bulldog gonna sacrifice itself to save a kid. No, Mark Tufo's credit, he would have likely thrown one of his kids to the zombies to give him time to pick that dog up and carry it. Uh, he's in 14 books, and the bulldog survived all of them.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
terrific. I will
it
say,
is.
well, what's interesting too is that sometimes it's the odd animal you don't expect. When I was riding endurance horses and working at a large Arabian ranch in northern Arizona, the owner's daughter had a very well started the summer as a very overweight basset hound. Absolutely, real heavy. By the end of the summer, we had to wrap her. She was wearing little booties because she was hitting the trail to go with us on endurance horses, and that dog was doing 25 miles. She was the fittest basset hound you've ever seen in your life. She was just this rippling, hard mass of muscles. I didn't even know. I didn't even know. Sorry, not bulldogs, basset hounds. I didn't even know a basset hound could look like that. It was really impressive.
Well,
But it was, she wanted to go, and if you locked her up, she howled. Well, she was a hound, and she would alert the next 5 counties that we were being horrible and had locked her up in the tack room and that she was going to die of the abuse. So the choices were make the people who were still at the ranch deal with the howling basset hound or let her go with us. And so as long as she could keep up, like we didn't take her on long rides at first. At first, the horses weren't that fit either. So, it's like any athlete, you have to build your endurance. But yeah, she was an interesting character, that dog. Someday maybe she'll be in a book. I'll have to
I
write a horse book just to feature the basset hound.
I think that that's a good thing because, like you talked about your basset hound, I got Mitzi. We call her. She's fat old dog. She's a we rescue pug, and she was fat and she could lay better than any dog I ever saw. And then we started taking her for the walks. Then we had to buy her a size down harness. Then we had to buy her another one, and she never went more than she went down the 2 sizes, but that was it. And she's never going to be a massive muscle, But
Well, no, but sometimes it's not even the massive muscle. It's just that, you know, she gets to go out on walks and clearly she's liking them. I mean, I think the marvelous thing I had a series of rescue horses in my life. Um and the lovely thing is they know they're saved. They don't know what you saved. They don't know that you saved them from whatever was coming. I don't think they have that kind of looking forwardness for the most part, but they certainly know they've been saved. And it's really rewarding, even when they're tough. Um, Sometimes rescues are hard to work with. They've had a bad life, and it shows. Did
I
your pug have house training issues, for example? I understand that's very common in small rescue dogs.
it was, but not anymore. She's
Yeah,
good. The she'll still occasionally go find something that's setting on the floor where she thinks she should be able to walk and do something. So interesting. I know we're coming up on the last quarter hour, but you mentioned the horses.
I did. I
So
love horses.
you're the woman that every time they're doing the panel on horses and science fiction, they put you on it.
That is true. I certainly, yeah, they do. I have an extensive background in horses. My first horse, in fact, was the county killer horse, literally. They didn't tell us that about him when we bought him. And we had a string of rescue horses that my mother found needed help. Uh, did I visualize? What did I use to visualize the mind lock? So mind locks are a device in the book that are a two-edged sword. They both preserve the psychically gifted mind from taking too much damage, but they also allow an order to be set so that it triggers your pain centers if you don't obey the order. Uh, I I visualized. I don't know that I visualized. I suppose the most common thing you could look at would be an old-fashioned watch, the kind where you can open the back of the case and see the actual the workings. Very high-end old pocket watches. You can actually see the stones, the jewels that they use to set a jewel setting in a watch is literal. They use the jewels because they're hard and they would take a lot of motion wear without wearing out. Um, but it's, yeah, I suppose the most common setting would be a watch, but it isn't that big. And it was what I was interested in with the mind locks and the visualization of them was to have something that you could hear, or that by bone conduction you could feel it when it starts to click or tick or whir. You could actually, you know, get a warning out of it before you're in too deep. And of course, in the book, characters variously choose to heed that warning and not, as the setting calls for. But probably the most, the clearest visualization of it would be as a watchwork. Um, there's no, interestingly, it is because of the watchwork. A lot of people do call, but the Bone Orchard steampunk. But there's no steam anywhere in this book. There's not a train. There's none of that. It's just the one watchwork. But it is very gothic, and certainly steampunk does have its roots, some of its roots there too. Um,
Now, oh, she's reading it.
I
Um,
was reading it. It's true. I read. I do
Here,
that.
I'm going to let everybody else read what she's reading so that while you're reading, she can formulate her response.
Oh well, that was did I look at, actually my father had a watch that was like that when I was a kid. So um I was familiar with it. And it was a he also had a watch that was self-winding, which is an interesting feature. But when you would turn it, you could hear the watchwork whir, and it didn't sound like tick tick tick. When you tipped it, it was the little gyroscope inside it spinning to wind the watch, so you could hear it whir. And that was one of the things that I used undoubtedly, even though I didn't put it together that way in my head. I'm sure that that was a heavy inspiration for me.
I have
Um,
sensed something in the talking with you and the knowing you over the years. No, that you are a research fanatic, I
I
bet.
love my research. I do.
So
Yeah.
the so why do you love your research? I
Why do I
mean,
love my research? I guess because I'm curious about everything. I'm not good at everything, but I can read about it. I can figure out, I can read about how things worked or how people lived. Um, I studied to be an archaeologist for a while, and I loved archaeology because it was, trying to find the past and figure it out. Um, I love history research for the same reason. Um, I'm, a lot of writers are basically a little nosy. We like to know about people. We like to know about their lives. If you don't want to know about people, hopefully you're not writing books about them. Um,
so
um, even if you dislike them, you may want to know about them. So don't let that stop you. But I love research. I fall down research rabbit holes very readily. Um, I I like to know why.
I got a silly. I'm going to guess here. This is just a simple guess. That growing up somewhere near your house or a house that you visited frequently, somebody had a set of encyclopedias, and that you would randomly pick encyclopedias off the shelf and occasionally just start reading.
Okay, so to be honest, my parents had a set of junior encyclopedias. I did not read out of them randomly. I did. I read in things that I was interested in. So I read all the sections about animals, for example. I read sections about mythology, and then I went and found mythology books um, and worked, and read a lot of those.
That's close enough.
Probably, and my dad didn't have a strong sense of um, it's not appropriate, it's too advanced for you. He figured if it was too advanced, you should come ask some questions about it if you didn't understand. Um, and my mom was very much that way as well. So they were really good training for me to grow up and be fairly curious about things. Um,
Yeah,
I never took anything apart. That much I can claim. My brothers cannot make the same claim. They took a lot of things apart as kids and as teenagers occasionally. Um, because but that's a different form of, it's the same form of, it's a curiosity. You want to know how it works. You want to know why it works. I want to know why this thing in history happened. I want to know how they made butter. It's not because it's useful to me particularly, but I want to know. And I read a lot of historical books growing up as a kid, not history books necessarily, but things that were based in out of previous centuries. So that would stoke the curiosity to then go look at how those people's lives worked. And sometimes I found the writers were correct, and sometimes I found that the writers had fudged for dramatic and for dramatic purpose, which that's valid. It's a book. If it's in the fiction section, it's fiction, generally speaking. um doesn't everyone read encyclopedias for fun, says Barbro. I don't know, apparently they don't, and it's a mystery to me why not. um they're a great place to find things out. I There's an encyclopedia set that a lot of historical researchers really enjoy. It's a 1911 set, and I highly recommend it. They talk about people you've never heard of, but that really helped make history. So there's an encyclopedia for people to go look at the 1911 uh, encyclopedias. Um,
it is. I hate to do this because I mean, every show has a beginning and an end,
yep,
and
and Bob and I can talk forever. We have proven this at several cons.
oh God, yes, you are a pleasure to talk to. The But this notion on the encyclopedias, yeah, it's. I think that children today who do not have access to that long row of identical bindings with letters that says S to ST,
Yeah,
or whatever.
Kevin is right. He says the encyclopedic knowledge is really handy at a role playing games convention that we have both attended, and the SCA and places like that. Yeah, those old encyclopedias, they're damn useful. It turns out.
Yeah, I know. But I can still remember getting rid of old encyclopedias, thinking now that, oh my God, how did I do that? And so I got my eye open for whenever I go to a yard sale for used encyclopedias. It's like, oh heck yeah! But anyway, the Bone Orchard is the title. The heroine is there to prevent the evil sons from taking over the emperor's uh, land, and he wants her to do it for her.
Yep. He's the only one she is the only one that he can absolutely trust because she has no options. She
Excellent.
literally is forced to do what he says. So he can trust her absolutely. If he says never tell a secret, she will never tell it. So um it's
Most
a delicate
excellent.
position for her to be in.
Now, this podcast will be available on the B Cubed, the YouTube B Cube Press YouTube channel under live streaming. Virtually as soon as we're done here, it streams there live. And with us today, reminder, is the one and the only Sara Mueller of Portland. Uh, but her and her husband are down in Reno on family business. And so enjoy Reno.
Thank you. Reno is actually a really lovely town.
I am glad. And as we were discussing, if you go just south of Reno, there's a town called Tonopah.
Yes.
Uh,
And WesterCon is going to be in Tonopah this year. Tonopah has possibly the most beautiful Victorian hotel I have ever seen.
a
It's
researcher
not a big
suite.
town, but the Mizpah is something. It was built in the gold rush, the silver rush in Nevada. Um, and it's very
Yeah.
the room is unrepresentative of this is my mother-in-law's dining room where I am, in spite of the chair that I'm currently in. So yeah, it looks a little Spartan, but it's because it's a dining room in a private
Oh,
house.
you're in the Mizpah right now.
No, I'm not in the Mizpah.
Oh,
I am in Reno at my mother-in-law's house.
I was going to say that.
But the no, yeah, the Mizpah is
Elegant.
the hotel in Tonopah that is. I recommend, even if you don't stay there for WesterCon, you might want to go look at it. Just go
Uh,
take a stroll through the lobby, get a cup of coffee in the dining room. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's gorgeously restored.
and by the way, it's 4 hours south of Reno, but in Nevada, that's just south.
It kind of is. It's true.
Uh, so now I will remind you guys that we're on every week, and next week we will have the one and the only Voss Foster. Now, Voss is going to talk to us about writing gay romance novels. Everyone has a specialty, and Voss, we've had him write several stories for us for BQ Press. He's a powerfully good writer, and he is uh, working on a project for us. And but that's one of the things that he is gonna come on, and I think he writes under the name of Rude of Heart, but you can also find his uh, books, Toxic of the Office of Preternatural Affairs, books 1, 2, and 3. If you go up to look for him, and you'll find him at vossfoster.com. Uh, so he's on there next week, and the week after that, we have your favorite ranters. Any of those of you who have not watched David Gerald, you know David?
I do.
Can he not rant with the best of them?
He has an exceptional beautiful ranting credential.
And when you put him online with Jim Wright, the one, the only Jim Wright.
You know, that's going to be awesome. That
Oh,
one's going to be wonderful.
They show up the last Sunday of every month.
That's
they,
terrific.
They do that just so that I will give money to the American Civil Liberties Union. You got to admire these two guys that are giving of their time and their ranting skills to raise money for the ACLU.
That is a gorgeous cause, and I will add that Jim's ranting skills are famous in certain portions of the internet. So they're both exceptional ranters, and they're well spoken. They're not ranting just off their cuff. They know deeply what they're talking about.
Oh, they do. David, I found it impressive. I met this guy on Facebook is like saying all the things I want to say, but better, as if he know how to write. Then I caught on that he was a writer. Oh, that's cool. I mean, we've been friends. And then somebody mentioned tribbles, and it was like this guy had been friends with for a couple 3 years on Facebook. I find out he is the author of The Trouble with Tribbles, and it was like, wow. But they they're
I'm
on
glad
here.
they're coming. It's gonna be it's gonna be quite the floor show, and everybody should come watch it.
Oh, it's the last Sunday of every month, and you can go find all the back episodes on the YouTube's BQ Press page, and so just like you'll be able to, you will now be enshrined in this interview forever on the BQ Press project page or the BQ Press YouTube page, and
Well,
it's
with them, I'm in good company.
Sarah. With you, they are in good company.
Oh, thank you, sir. It's
You
been
are
fun.
It's been fun. You're a kind soul. So wave goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Oh wait, no, you're a horsewoman, right?
Yeah.
So it's elbow, elbow, wrist, wrist.
Oh, you want the parade wave?
Yeah. Okay, there we go. And you're not even wearing spandex.
No, no.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody, and take care.
Bye, all.